Hi, and welcome to today's training on addressing challenging behaviors. We're going to do the prevent, teach, reinforce model with today's training, part one. With the pyramid model, this is the social emotional development for young children ages birth to 5. We have a pyramid of tiered structured supports within the implementation of using social emotional skills with young children. So today we're going to look at that very top tier with intensive individualized interventions. And this is going to refer to the development and implementation of individualized behavior support plans for children with persistent challenging behavior. It's really placed at the top to illustrate that very few children might be expected to need this level of support even when all the other components of the pyramid model practices are put into place. And that's including those nurturing relationships, those high quality environments, and those targeted social emotional supports. It also indicates that, when we think about intensive interventions for children, we want to make sure that these practices are put in place and the intensive intervention is added to these basic structures for strategies to assist children who do have significant behavior challenges. So before we get to intensive intervention, we want to remember that all levels of the pyramid must be put in place. Even when a behavior seems challenging, it will often respond to the practices we use that we know work. So this is going to include preventing challenging behavior by involving children in appropriate activities, making sure we have a really solid schedule for the day, ensuring that expectations for activities are appropriate, making sure we have those transition routines so children have time to end their play, develop, host, and teach expectations. It's also going to be really critical to teach all children social emotional skills. For some of those children, we'll need some more individualized instruction and support around those skills because they may have social emotional skill delays. When a behavior is challenging, this might be a behavior that doesn't meet your expectations. We do want to make sure we are using evidence-based strategies to reduce the behavior. So that might include some redirection or reminders of behavior expectations in certain settings. So we want to address persistent challenging behavior, but it should be addressed in the context of all the positive practices being in place in the classroom. So intensive intervention, when do we know when there's a need for intensive individual intervention? And so we're going to ask ourselves, what is the behavior concern? Why is the behavior challenging? So these are some quotes from teachers about children's behavior. And we want to think through if we can identify the concern. What makes this behavior challenging and in need of intensive intervention? So I've had children grab toys, but Emma's doing it constantly. The other children don't want to play with her. This teacher's concern is the frequency of the behavior. So children sometimes grab toys, but when it occurs at a higher frequency, it can become more challenging. The next one, sometimes children refuse to follow directions. Jared's behavior is extreme. He throws objects, tries to kick me, and screams. So the concern on this one is the intensity or severity of the behavior. When a behavior is dangerous, it might cause harm or has the potential to do so, this is going to require more focused or intensive intervention. Intensity may also be how long something lasts. For example, a tantrum that lasts for as long as an hour or screaming that is very loud and lasts a long time would be a concern. Our third one, by now, I would expect Paul to settle into the routine, but he hasn't. Every day he has a tantrum during arrival. Nothing I do has helped. The concern with this behavior is the persistence of the behavior. It's continued for several days, even though she has tried all the usual interventions as before. And so, in each of these, the frequency of the behavior, the intensity or severity, and its persistence are all cues that an intensive individual intervention is needed. When you do need individualized intervention to address persistent challenging behavior that is not responsive to typical behavior prevention and response strategies, we're going to follow the formal team-based process of a functional behavior assessment. And so at this level, we will use a formal process of completing a comprehensive assessment to identify the function of a behavior and identify strategies to address the function of that behavior. So once we complete a functional based assessment, the strategies we use in the intervention will come directly from the intervention information you identified during that assessment. So we want to think through what we need to know before we begin this process. And we want to start by talking about understanding behavior. So behavior is something we do. It's a form of communication that we can see. This form can be defined in a way that allows everyone to observe the same thing for consistency purposes. So some examples might be, this child has his eyes closed, hands over his ears. We might be concerned of why is the child doing that, what's going on, or what is the child trying to communicate. We don't know any of that right now. We only know that the behavior is hands over the ears with eyes closed. So it's something that we can see or hear happening. Behavior has a communicated message, and we determine the message of that behavior by paying attention to the context of that behavior. So the message might be something along the lines of, like, I want something, I'm sad, I need help, or any of other messages that they need help communicating. So I'm going to think through this picture here. What might this boy be communicating in his behavior? With his eyes closed, hand on his head. We also think about behavior as being learned. At some point, the behavior, resulted in the child either avoiding something or getting something that increases the likelihood that the behavior will occur again. So we're not indicating that children are aware that a behavior results in avoiding something or getting something, but we are acknowledging that over time, when the behavior has occurred, it's resulted in an outcome that serves to maintain the behavior or even increase the likelihood that it will occur again. So we're going to look at the picture. We see behavior here. We see what the child's doing. We see that the child, what the child is getting when the behavior occurs. So it could be a variety of things, but we see here that he's getting some attention. He's getting some help. He's within close proximity to the teacher. He's playing with another child. He's playing with another adult. We also see, when we look at children, we want to think about objects. Is there a toy involved? Is there books? Is there specific materials involved? Is there play involved? And is the child going to continue to play with the toy? Are they going to move on to a different toy? Are they going to change locations? We also might think that children might need food. So whether that's more lunch or maybe a snack. We want to think also, so we want to, this slide was talking about behavior obtaining something, but behavior might also be about avoiding something. And so the behavior might be to avoid other children, to avoid a particular task that they don't care for. So something they don't want to do as much, such as cleanup or get into circle time. They also might be avoiding trying to share a toy with a peer, loud noises, or they might even be trying to avoid attention, whether it's through the teacher instruction, their peers, or direction from an activity. As we think about addressing challenging behavior, we do have to involve the families. We want to do this at the very beginning when challenging behavior becomes more frequent, intense, or is more persistent. Family members can help us understand the behavior. We'll also want to collaborate with the families in the process of conducting the assessment in order to develop the plan. We want to ensure that we're considering the family's beliefs, values, culture, and the unique goals that the family has for their child. Some examples of values and beliefs. Families have different religious perspectives. Their family composition might be very diverse. They may be recent immigrants or might be in a different economical status. These will also contribute more or less to the child's behavior. So, some things to consider about families and the differences. We want to think through, how might children who don't speak English or don't understand English develop behavior that we might identify as challenging? And that is going to come from understanding what kind of classroom we're building, what kind of diverse racial or ethnic backgrounds we have represented in our classroom, and also the diversity in the family compositions that we are witnessing for the families we're supporting. We also have to consider our own culture too, and the values and how we think about a child's behavior. Do we have strongly held personal values and beliefs that result in how we interpret behavior, maybe as disrespectful or non-compliant? So when we think about ourselves identifying a behavior as challenging, is it going to be because we have a difference in values from the children that we're supporting? Differences in values and beliefs can definitely lead to very disproportional differences in how behavior is viewed and addressed. One person's view of a challenging behavior may not fit your view of a challenging behavior. So it's important to know and understand that your personal beliefs do have somewhat of an effect on the way we address and handle challenging behaviors. We're going to watch a short video here. Let me pull this up. And the video is going to be a short video on an experiment that shows how early educators can be unconsciously biased in the way we interpret a child's behavior. So this study was designed to examine the potential role of preschool educators and their implicit biases as a partial explanation behind preschool expulsions.
It's a new study out of the Yale Child Study Center that I had to read a few times just to believe what it was telling me. The researchers recruited about 135 preschool teachers. They had them watch video footage of 4 kids playing, a black boy, a black girl, a white boy, and a white girl. And they told the teachers, their subjects, watch the video, there may be some challenging behaviors. As soon as you see something that could become challenging, hit the enter key on your keypad. Well, here's the trick. There was no challenging behavior. The researchers were using eye scan technology to see which child the teachers were looking at the most. And what they found is that the teachers, both white and black alike, spent the most time watching the black boy, waiting for bad behavior that never came. There's one more really interesting headline in this study, which comes later. The teachers were also given a 1-paragraph description to read of a hypothetical child with a stereotypical name who behaves pretty badly in class, pushes, scratches, throws toys. And some of the teachers were also given some biographical information that helped make sense of that behavior. They were told that the child lives with his mother, Father has been in and out for years, they're relatively poor, the mother is depressed, works 3 jobs. The researchers wanted to know if knowing this information made the teachers more empathetic to the kid. Well, here's the shock. It did, but only if the teacher and the child were of the same race. If the teacher and the child, a white teacher and a black child, or even a black teacher and a white child, knowing that biographical information, those teachers were less empathetic towards those students. And here's why this matters. Imagine if this is true, if there's this empathy deficit in preschool, well, imagine where else that's true.
So as you watch the video, some things to really make sure that you're paying attention to. Think about what was most striking outcome of that study for you. How do you think your values and beliefs affect how you view challenging behavior? And if your expectation is that a child will have challenging behavior, are you more likely to see their behavior as challenging? So we want to, become reflective on those questions to become more aware of when and how you respond to challenging behavior and think through, reflect on our responses here. Do I respond in the same way with each and every child? When is my response different? How am I feeling? We want to be able to identify what the behavior is really trying to communicate in order to possibly develop a plan to address our own personal responses. We must also be aware that a child's challenging behavior could be associated with a past traumatic event. Trauma refers to events that overwhelm a child's ability to manage their own behavior. If a child has been exposed to trauma, they might respond to certain triggers or conditions in ways that are unexpected. So while we might not know if a child has experienced trauma, we want to be open to learning more about the behavior and how trauma could be a factor related to challenging behavior. So something in the current environment might trigger this student in the same way the child has to for the traumatic event itself, whether that be running away, hitting, tantrums, or withdrawing from a situation. While we can't eliminate a past traumatic event, there's a lot that early educators can do to support a child exposed to trauma. The pyramid model practices provide responsive relationships and supportive, predictable environments. These are factors linked to building a child's resiliency. The teaching of social skills and emotional skills are critical for children who have experienced trauma. We also want to offer support to families, recognize traumatic events, and provide families with resources they might need to strengthen their family functioning and reduce stress. So, when we begin the individualized intervention process, we'll be considering trauma as we identify the strategies that we'll use. For example, we might identify strategies that help the child feel safe. We want to be sure that all adults are validating the child's emotions when they're stressed or having a tantrum and use strategies to help the child express those strong emotions in a more appropriate way. We might need to eliminate or modify triggers that contribute to the child's challenging behavior. For example, if a child reacts to a particular song or won't rest if the room is completely dark or doesn't want to have the bathroom door closed when they go to the restroom. These are some critical components to developing individualized interventions that could result in reducing challenging behavior and helping children with persistent challenging behavior learn some alternative skills. And this is going to include the fact that behavior is learned, behavior is communication, behavior can be observed and clearly defined. It serves a function and it occurs in the context of classroom culture, family culture, children's experiences, including past and ongoing trauma. So we're focusing on 2 dimensions of communication. Every communicative behavior can be described by the form and the function of the communication. So children engage in challenging behaviors because it works for them. Challenging behavior results in the child gaining access to something or someone, or avoiding something or someone. A positive behavior support is based on the assumption that children's challenging behavior has meaning. We have many forms of communication to express with our behaviors. So this is going to include words, sentences, pointing, crying, biting. So, we think through what are some of the first things that children communicate. When children first communicate, they may use different forms of communicative behavior. So, how do we first hear no or want from somebody? What about when they're 9 months old and don't have words? So, with communicative behavior, we can identify both the function of the communication and the form of communication. Children engage in challenging behavior because it works for them. And so these are many things that the behavior might be trying to tell us. Again, the two functions of behavior is either to obtain something or to get away from something. So I want you to play with me, or I don't want you to play with me. I want to clean up, or I don't want to clean up. So a child who has limited social skills or who has learned over time that engaging in challenging behavior will meet their needs effectively, they may also use challenging behavior instead of language, even if they have the language. Behavior can mean many things, and we need to remember we may not like the message, but we can identify and understand it. Children engage in challenging behavior because it works for them by sending a powerful message, which results in those functions, either obtaining or getting away from something. So there's different types of messages here. So obtain desired item, obtain sensory, avoid sensory. When we want to determine the meaning of a behavior, we are determining the function, and there is a process for determining the function of the behavior. And it might be a little complicated, but it can be done. We're going to start by using the ABCs. We're trying to understand why children do what they do, or trying to determine the behavior, the meaning of behavior. We might attend to the word function. So the function of the behavior is what the child is really trying to communicate with this behavior. Again, they either want to obtain something or avoid something. In order to understand that behavior, or what that behavior is intended to communicate with us, we have to look for clues, or what happens before and what happens after the behavior. So even though it can seem like it, behaviors do not really happen out of the blue. Something always happens before a challenging behavior, and something always happens after a challenging behavior. The more we observe these behaviors and what happens before or afterwards, the more clues we'll have to figure out why children are doing what they're doing. Once we can identify the meaning or the function of a challenging behavior, we can create a plan to change it. So the ABCs, A stands for antecedent. Antecedent refers to something that happens directly before a behavior happens. These are all the things that can happen before behaviors that might turn the child's challenging behavior. B is for behavior itself. Behavior is what the child did. This is something that we see or hear the child doing or saying. So we might ask ourselves, what did the child's challenging behavior look like? And then C is for consequence. When we talk about consequence, this simply means what happened immediately after the behavior. And we'll go into depth here in the next couple of slides. So our antecedents are those events that occur immediately before challenging behavior. They include specific times of day, settings, people, and activities that might set off or turn on that challenging behavior. So there's a couple of examples here. Was up here playing with a toy that they wanted? Were you talking with other children and it had been a while since the child received attention from you? Did you say it's time to go up for rest? Let's clean up the toys so they're ready for us to play with after nap time. Looking at antecedents can help us figure out the function of a challenging behavior. Even if it doesn't seem like it, children tend to use challenging behavior in the same situations and around the same types of antecedents. So, if you've ever caught yourself thinking, every time we come to circle time, they start fighting, or she does this every time we try and sit and eat snack at the table. There are some consistencies in these situations, whether it's transitions, routines, or time of day, that give us information about why behavior occurs. Knowing when the child is most likely to have challenging behavior and when challenging behavior is less likely to occur can help us plan how to support the child. So this slide serves as a reminder about defining the behavior of interest. So our behavior can be observed, measured, and repeated. Consequences are events or contexts that occur immediately after a challenging behavior. So this is another important place to look to figure out the meaning or function of a behavior. What happens after the challenging behavior or the consequence will tell us a lot about the meaning or the function of the behavior. How we respond to challenging behavior, even if we think it should reduce or stop the challenging behavior, makes it more or less likely to happen. If we tell a child to clean up their toys and they start screaming and crying, and we respond by saying, okay, you can have more time to play, you made the screaming and the crying more likely to happen in the future. The child was communicating with screaming and crying that they wanted more time to play and did not want to clean up. Most of the time, we don't mean to reinforce or reward challenging behavior at all. We typically think that consequence is what adults do after behavior to punish or respond to the behavior. But here, when we think about the word consequence, we're just going to think about it as whatever happens immediately after the behavior. So this might be a peer giving a child a toy when the child hits the peer. A teacher is hugging a child after they screamed and cried. Giving a child more time to play outside after they had a tantrum. Those are all consequences. Those are all responses to the behavior immediately afterwards. So this is a graphic that explains the path. We're going to determine the function with observing the antecedents, the behavior, and consequences with the goal of determining why the challenging behavior is occurring. So we just want to remember that all behavior has a function. This is something that the child is trying to communicate, again, either to obtain something or to avoid something. So we're going to watch a quick video clip about, and we're going to watch a little boy named Tim. There's a few video clips from a classroom that represent real life scenarios where we would want to know the function or the meaning of behavior. So in the videos, we're going to look for what triggers the behavior, that antecedent, what is the challenging behavior, and then what is the consequence, what happens immediately after the behavior. And we want to think through, watching piece by piece, what does the child get or avoid by engaging in that behavior. So we've got Tim here. We're going to watch Tim and see what kind of things he gets into.
Yeah, she's scared to go one out, and the other one's I'm coming. Go back over here. Don't do it, Dad. It's on my shoulder.
So for Tim, we see a couple things. We see that he's playing alone in the block area and he goes up to a group of children playing. We then see that his behavior, he sticks out his tongue, he's making a raspberry sound, he scratches the boy on his shoulder, he hits the boy. And the immediate response after that behavior occurred was the boy yelling at him, and the friend brings him a lizard, and the boy yells to this teacher. And so we would want to think through this. What is the function of this behavior? So with this particular example, the function of the behavior was to obtain his peers' attention. And in this case, the child might have wanted to play with the other children. We're going to watch again. We're going to watch a video again. So again, looking for the antecedents, what's happening right before the behavior itself, and then those consequences.
It's time for you to sleep. Yes.
Look at me, kiss.
Yes. 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 Good job. Okay, we're going to say bye-bye to Mimi. Bye-bye, Mimi. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Okay, we're going to do movement time. Movement time. Here we go. We're going to do our dance.
Ryan, ready to dance? It's time. You want to dance, Ryan? Yeah? Dance. Hi, buddy. How are you? How are you?
Yeah, we're going to do that. Okay, here we go.
And so in this video, we see that the antecedent starts with the teacher kissing the children's cheeks with a puppet and saying goodbye to Mimi, the puppet, and then putting the puppet away. After that happens, the child immediately starts hitting himself on the head with his fist and pulling at his shirt. Finally, followed by the adult saying ready to dance, and the child goes and sits in her lap and is smiling. So take a second, what would you think might be the function of this behavior? And so by looking at these three items, the function of the behavior can be identified as he was trying to obtain the teacher's attention. And in this case, the child was able to obtain that with his behavior. We're going to watch the second child again, and same thing. We're going to watch for our antecedents, our behaviors, and the consequences.
All right. Let's go over here and play with some balls. Miss Jeannie, get you some balls. Ryan, do you need help? Do you need help? Do you need help? 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 Let's put our shirt back on, okay? There we go. Would you like to have a ball? Oh, let's go. Would you like to have a ball? Huh? What would you like? You want me to hug? Oh, what? Oh, nice hug. Nice hug.
Okay, so our antecedent here, we see that the teacher is helping a child sit and walks away to find him a toy. The behavior itself, he's pulling his arms out of his shirt, he's hitting himself in the head, and he's kind of throwing himself backwards and kicking. And then the consequence immediately afterwards, she returns, she's talking to him, helps him get his shirt back on, and then gives him hugs. So thinking about these three items and the function of the behavior, the function here is he was trying to obtain the teacher's attention. So he may have wanted the teacher to comfort him or to interact with him. The teacher was intuitively teaching the child the sign for help as a replacement for the challenging behavior. And so as we go through the process of discussing challenging behaviors, we'll discuss how to determine how to teach children to replace a challenging behavior. When we identify skills to teach, the team of people who help make up addressing the challenging behavior need to consider the context. Where are the instances of challenging behavior occurring? Some children need to be explicitly taught when engaging in certain behavior is appropriate and when it's not. For example, running is acceptable outside on the playground, but not in the classroom or moving between centers during free choice. So we want to offer think of things to offer the child of when a behavior is acceptable in one location and not another. Whoever's addressing the behaviors will also want to consider that the same behavior can have different functions. So this example on the slide demonstrates that a similar behavior can happen, but the function is different depending on the setting. And the skills to be taught would be different once the function is determined. So screaming and crying at school to avoid cleaning up after snack, or screaming and crying at home to gain a parent's attention. We're still dealing with that screaming and crying, but it has two separate different functions. So we want to understand that behavior includes not only the meaning or purpose of a behavior, but also the context in which it occurs. So we have talked about context with a brief discussion of culture. When we're talking about not only what occurs just before a behavior happens, but also about what the child has experienced in their life. So children might have some immediate triggers. For example, events that occur immediately before the child cries, or maybe it includes a physical environment. Understanding immediate triggers can help put strategies in place to support the child when triggers occur. So this helps to prevent those challenging behaviors. So for example, a child might be more likely to have a challenging behavior when experiencing an ear infection, allergy, or discomfort such as hunger. Events that occur before a child enters the program, but can also discuss with the family on changing the way the immediate event affects the behavior for past or ongoing trauma. So we know that the pyramid model is focused on prevention of challenging behaviors and on teaching children social and emotional skills. But even when these practices are in place, some young children will need to engage in challenging behavior. And we'll talk about in future sessions what we do when problem behavior occurs in the moment and how you as a teacher might respond. This is going to wrap up today's session for addressing challenging behaviors, prevent, teach, reinforce, part 1. In future sessions, we will continue to work through how to identify replacement skills and other supports for children who are demonstrating these challenging behaviors. My name is Lexi Langiri, and I'm wrapping up today's session. If you have any questions, please feel free to call or email me.